So just as a heads up, Scott, cards on the table, I would be described as the noob of all noobs when it comes to the subject matter tonight. I'll hit kind of high level stuff. Chuck will probably get down in the ditches and roll up his sleeves with you.
All right. Well, I game a little bit. All right, I do tabletop gaming a little bit, but David, don't sell yourself short. You've already interviewed Mike from Gaslands and the Car Wars guys, and we did a bit of sponsored content for Car Wars where we did a weathering tutorial.
I'm at the stage where you know just enough to get yourself in trouble by saying something completely wrong.
It's hard to get yourself in trouble for tabletop gaming unless you're, I think the Tomb of Horrors is easy.
Okay.
If somebody were to say that, then you could get in trouble.
Noted.
But that's a very deep cut.
D&D 4th edition was best.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, I respect your opinion, but
I'm kidding. But that would definitely not be something that would, very few people would agree with you on that.
I actually like the 4th edition system. It's just terrible at being Dungeons and Dragons.
Exactly. So, all right. So I'm going to count us in. I'll do our little introduction. I'll thank our patrons, and then we'll get straight to Scott McDonald. And I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. Thank God. We've interviewed people from Germany and Sweden in the last couple days. And the Netherlands are the trickiest ones because they will not let any pronunciation slide, nor should they. It's a beautiful language. Is it a language? Sure, it's a language.
I have a collaborator named Philip Jensen, or it's probably Jensen, now that I think about it, but I've never actually pronounced his name back to him, so.
Probably for the best.
Yeah, I'd hold off as long as you can.
All right, in 3, 2.
You're watching Diecast Breakdown with Chuck Ellis, David Johns, and Mark McHotwheel. So sit back, strap in, and hang on. The breakdown starts now.
Well, hey there, folks. Chuck here, and welcome to Diecast Breakdown. I'm so glad you're here with us today, and I would also like to thank our executive producer level patrons that help make this show go. They are First and 64th Customs, Dane Self, DrivenDreams.org, Elevation Diecast Racing, Jason J. Goldenberg, Lewis Big Lou Tanahara, Mad Visions, Reviews Through Another Lens, Twice Diecast, and Video Geek Productions. All of these people are wild and crazy and inspired enough to give us $20 a month so that we'll say their name on air. We are so grateful to them and all the other patrons that make this show go. If you want to know how you can join their ranks, you can visit diecastbreakdown.com, where you can find links to our Patreon. You can find our merch and get cool t-shirts. Did you know that we have like 20 different versions of the Diecast Breakdown logo? We do. And my brother Justin designed almost all of them. I did one, and you'll have to guess which one. But while we're figuring things out, I'm going to introduce my co-host, my friend, my colleague, my co-conspirator, Mr. David Johns. David, how the heck are you today?
I'm good. You forgot the title partner in the future. We're going to the future tonight. Can't wait to share it with everybody. We'll see if it's a bleak look into the future or who knows.
It's certainly going to be a colorful one. And I am thrilled because this is one of my favorite niches when it comes to tiny cars, in that it is one that thrives on imagination. And this is not like those other games that we've had on. This one's a little different, and I think you're going to dig it once we have it explained to you. But we are going to be talking about a very cool new game that it's not new, but a new version of the game that just dropped on Kickstarter. And it is called Wasteland Degenerates. It is a post-apocalyptic mad something, I don't know, kind of game, kind of Wastelands experience. But
let me just break in.
He's going to break in.
Yeah. A gas-guzzling, high-octane, post-apocalyptic RPG about miserable, radiated scum struggling to survive in tomorrow's unforgiving carcass.
See, if I was a good host, I would have had that locked and loaded. But thank you to my guest, Mr. Scott C. McDonald, the creator of Wasteland Degenerates. Scott, thank you so much for being on the show. We're so thrilled to talk to you today.
Thank you for having me. I was really excited to hear about your guys' show because I had not heard of it before.
That would make you in a very large group of people.
Get in
That's
line.
okay.
Get in line, Scott.
We're changing it. We're changing that one person at a time,
That's right.
and you are that latest person. So, Scott, you've got a really interesting, we'll call it a side hustle, passion project. You've taken stuff from your head and put it out there in the world and done what I think is an incredibly difficult thing to do and created a tabletop RPG. So for those of us in the audience who don't know, explain to us what a tabletop RPG is and how that's different from your typical Milton Bradley thing that you take off the shelf.
Sure. Well, a tabletop RPG is basically a situation where you get together with your friends, and one of your friends is like the game master who hides behind a screen and lies about his dice rolls and takes the rest of your friends through an adventure of the imagination where you can just hear about all of the very cool scenarios that you're inhabiting with your player characters, which are characters that you have drawn all the statistics for on your piece of paper. And it's basically playing make-believe as an adult with dice. And you roll the dice to see if you succeed or fail, or how badly you succeed or fail. And this is a nerdy pastime that people have been contributing to for over 50 years now. Dungeons and Dragons came out, about when I was born in the 70s. And people are still doing it in various forms. This is not Dungeons and Dragons, but we all harken back to those Halicon days of Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, rolling dice and having very sexist pictures in the rule books.
Hey, those airbrushed works of art that you talk about were very formative to many of us. And for those who don't know, because I do know there are several people who don't play these regularly, RPG does not stand for rocket propelled grenade, although it could in this game. It stands for role playing game. So that would be your standard for things like Dungeons and Dragons or Shadowrun, Cyberpunk. Yeah. So there's a lot of different ones out there, and you've decided to take this platform and adapt it to a post-apocalyptic wasteland full of gas-guzzling vehicles spreading mayhem far and wide. And we've seen stuff not entirely unlike this in the form of other games like Car Wars and Gaslands, but yours is unique in that it has a much more imagination-driven element to it. So tell people how your game differs from Gaslands or Car Wars.
Well, Gaslands and Car Wars are pretty much either miniatures, or when I played Car Wars back when I was 10 years old, it was just little pieces of cardboard that you would move around on a map. But Wasteland Degenerates is a role-playing game first. So you make your character a person character, and your character might have a car. And the cars have their own personalities and rules and whatnot. But, first and foremost, this is a role-playing game. If you need a car for a scenario, either you have one to start off because your character is an exiled grease monkey, or some other character that starts with a vehicle. Here, let me show you the grease monkey right there. See, it's a cool car. And if you get into a car combat, I have rules for dramatic car chase sequences that are not like the representational movement of vehicles in Gaslands or Car Wars. It's more of kind of, you've seen Mad Max Fury Road, I would assume.
Of course.
How the truck in Mad Max Fury Road, it was always the center of and like other cars would go around it. I have a road grid. When I did this, I was thinking of, I would need die-cast Hot Wheels cars. Here's the backside. And they will be placed on this road grid, which is center, right, left, top, bottom, or front, back. And as things move down the highway, anything on the road moves backwards, because it's not driving. And cars can shift lanes as they need to. but the action always stays focused on this road grid and the player's vehicle. So if bad guys are jockeying around, you can have them move through the grid, and they are always representationally on this grid.
Back with more Diecast Breakdown after this word from our sponsors. Legendary Hollywood concept artist and designer Fireball Tim Lawrence has created 3 exclusive pieces of automotive art based on the 3 hosts of Diecast Breakdown. Get these and other brilliant designs printed on mugs and more at fireballtimgarage.art today.
Cast Heads magazine is a digital publication dedicated to enhancing the lives of collectors all across the world by providing information on new models, reviews on brands and diecast accessories like figures and dioramas, throwing light on customizers, photographers and people who contribute to making the diecast world vibrant. Subscribe to Cast Heads for free and look for collaborations with Diecast Media Network at castheadsmagazine.com.
And now back to Diecast Breakdown.
Scott, I wanted to back up maybe and just as we do have a lot of diecast fans that have enjoyed getting to know other ways to enjoy their hobby, and that includes some RPGs that we've had on the show in the past. And I'm just curious, from your lifelong player perspective, it seems like the RPG genre is either having a little bit of a renaissance or just a nice steady growth because of we've had featured in Stranger Things. We've got a really popular RPG podcast on YouTube. And maybe it just happens to coincide with COVID where everybody was at home. Can you put your finger on something that may be attributing to the growth of the genre, why players are now seeking out RPGs?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the funny things is that when I was a kid, RPGs were for nerds, and it was really kind of looked down on, and you never got girls to play.
Mm-hmm.
But as time went on, people unlocked the potential of these games. So in the 90s, you had Vampire the Masquerade, which was a role-playing game that girls would play. Moving on, you had shooter video games, and the shooter video games started like using the tropes and the kind of the toy box of role-playing games, because they realized that people really like it when their characters, their representations in the game got better. And that has always been a feature of role-playing games. So like, if you find something that's really addictive, like my character gets better over time.
Sure.
And you apply that to video games, and you can even apply it to silly little web games and stuff where your little character gets better over time. So I think that there's aspects of role-playing games that have always tapped into an aspect of humanity that we really like, but the trick was to get it into a package that was generally acceptable to people. Back when it was a bunch of geeks in like Geneva, Wisconsin, who didn't have any girls playing with them, nobody cared about the extremely sexist pictures in the rule books.
Right.
But now we have people that actually think about those things and say, will this appeal to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is, I think in part, business is the thing that unlocked role-playing games. People realized, oh, we could actually make some money off of this. And as much as I dislike the corporatization of role-playing games, it has made it generally available to more people.
I think a lot about like how all of a sudden those Games Workshop stores started showing up, and now we have a wonderful store here in Gainesville, Florida, that's called Punk Outer. That is a tabletop gaming shop that not only does it sell tabletop games and tabletop RPG stuff, but they also have a fleet of tables set up, and they do tournament play for D&D, and they do Warhammer 40K, and they even have just regular like restaurant style booths, and they have a library that you can come in for free and check a game out and play a game on the table there, and you bring your own food, and they hope that you buy something in there, and we do. But it's a great date night for sure. and a great way to try some games out before you buy them. I've taken my daughter in there and played board games with her and then bought them because she enjoyed playing them. And yeah, it's just a fantastic way to engage with your friends. And I've played D&D some. I have actually never played any of the Wasteland games that we have. I own them all. I haven't had a chance to play them yet. But before we dive too much further into that, Scott, I want to talk about you for a second. Tell me about when you decided to start designing your own games, and is this the first game that you've done?
That's a great subject. I've been a lifelong collector of role-playing games, and during the pandemic, a friend gave me a copy of Morkborg, which is a Swedish role-playing game that I've discussed in the past, and it just sat on my shelf. And one day my best friend was hanging out. It was during the pandemic. We were like in each other's bubble. And she looked at the Morkborg book on the shelf. And Morkborg is written by a Swedish guy named Pelle Nielsen, I think. But it's also drawn a guy named Johan Nohr. And Johan Nohr is an incredible artist, and he does these like doom metal inspired monstrous pictures and all this great stuff. And my friend, who absolutely hates gaming with me and my gamer friends, she said, "Scott, you're going to run this for me." And so I was like, okay. You always shy away from gaming with me, so I will take this win. And I ran for her and another friend for about a year, and I got into the other variants of Morkborg, or Mjörkburi, as they say in Sweden. And I realized there was no Mad Max variant. There was no post-apocalyptic variant. And I used to be a big fan of a game called Gamma World back from the 80s. And so I'm like, well, I've got a lot of time. I've got a job that pays me enough that I can have the ability to spend time doing this. I'm just going to make a variant and see what happens. And it ended up, I reached out to an artist to ask him how much it costs to get a spread worth of art. And he said, "Before I tell you that, can you tell me about your game?" And I was like, okay, but art is all like sexy tieflings and men in armor and dragons and stuff. But I told him about it, and he said, "Scott, I want to work on this project with you." And that fellow's name was Matthew Mislinski, and he is the primary artist on Wasteland Degenerates. And I would attribute him to perhaps 55% of the success of Wasteland Degenerates, even though I pay him. He is the focus of all of the art. Anyways, it just took off from there. Last year, I did a backer kit campaign, made something like $16,000 total, which was not enough with inflation to even be a profitable enterprise for me. But it did kind of pay the costs of getting a zine out, and that's basically the origin story. I had enough success doing that I got the word out enough that I could do this Kickstarter campaign.
I'm always curious how these things come about. Now, I noticed that Mjörkborg or whatever is on the Wasteland Degenerates website is compatible with, and then compatible with Cyborg. So tell me how that works. How is your game compatible with other games?
Okay, yeah. So both Morkborg and Cyborg use the same basic rule set. Cyborg is by the same people, but is also by Johan Nohr and one of his other compatriots. And it's basically that heavy metal setting just fast forwarded into the cyberpunk future. And I decided that when I'm creating Wasteland Degenerates, the apocalypse that happened to end the world and create the universe of Wasteland Degenerates was of the same tech level as the cyborg world. So it's not specifically the cyborg world, but it is of a similar tech level. So all of the rules that they added to Cyborg with regards to technology and like weird sci-fi special abilities, all of that I ported over to Wasteland Degenerates so that anyone who is familiar with Cyborg will be right at home, and everyone who's played Morkborg will only take a small amount of effort to learn the extra rules that were added. It's a very easy system. Whenever you take an action, you roll a 20-sided die. And if you get a 12 or more with your bonus, you succeed. If you get less than 12, you fail. There's not a lot more to it. In fact, the players roll almost all the dice in these games. The game master doesn't roll very much at all. If a monster attacks you, you roll your defense. The game master doesn't roll to attack you. So it's an easy system. I find it accessible. Of course, the first thing I did was add a bunch of rules to make it more complicated. But that's just how these sorts of Morkborg stories go. Like, everyone wants to have their game set in this style of rule set, but it being so basic allows them to add the elements that they like very easily.
Don't touch that dial. Diecast Breakdown will be right back after these messages. Diecast Breakdown is produced in partnership with Twice Diecast and Driven Dreams Org on YouTube. Check out their channels in the video description and subscribe for more epic Diecast content.
Hey, this is Larry Wood.
This is Derek from Honest Diecast.
Hey, this is Chad Reed from Round 2.
This is Mike from Gaslands.
The SRT Jovita Show.
This is Champion DJK.
This is Mad Vision here.
This is Diecast Dude.
And you're watching Diecast Breakdown.
And now, the thrilling conclusion of this week's episode of Diecast Breakdown.
Something that intrigued me, can you clarify like the 6 cataclysms and what their role in the game is, Scott?
Yeah. So when I was thinking of this, Morkborg has these things called miseries. Every day you roll a die, it doesn't matter what kind of die it is. If you roll a 1, you get a weird prophecy, and like the world comes, like one of the 7 seals is broken, and like something comes true, like it rains blood, or fathers all cry themselves to death, or the sea becomes blood, and that sort of thing. And Cyborg has these things called miserable headlines, and those are basically things that pop up on your rad holographic glasses and alert you that the world is closer to being destroyed. All these awful things happen. It's not a happy place, but it is a hilarious place. So my variant on this, and it's not actually in the Jumper Cable edition, which I did last year. It's going to be in the new hardcover edition. But these cataclysms are, let's see, war. That's pretty, war never changes, to quote Fallout. The federal remnant of the United States government is fighting the Eisenclave, which are like the business people, and they're also both fighting the postalists, which are the post office became a religion.
Love that. Yeah.
And they're now all fighting each other. And then there's the gas hogs, which are the Mad Max guys who carve out territory on the edges. So they're all fighting. And if you roll that result on the die when you would have like a miserable headline in Cyborg, the war gets worse. And at the end of the war, once you get to the 6th result, basically the world ends in nuclear fire again. Then there's Fimbulwinter, which is basically nuclear winter. Like the sun gets darker, the atmosphere gets thicker, everyone gets cold, everyone freezes to death at the end. There's the Cluster, which is, it's much like The Last of Us. I may have some good jokes about the mushrooms being purple, so they're not just like The Last of Us. But these zombie making mushrooms will eventually get everybody. There is the Rift, which is my personal favorite. It's a red canyon in the middle of the country that like this red forest sprouts from, and there are wasps, like 2-foot long cat-sized wasps that live in this forest, and they come out and they try to turn humans into their egg sacs. And if you get infested by one of these, they may plant a pupa in the back of your skull, and then you just kind of wander around as an ambulatory egg sac, a larval incubator. Let's see. There's famine. I have an element to the game where there is a lot of food in the Wasteland, because they just make these protein chips that are kind of like Geld. They're like those little chocolate coins. that you get from your Jewish relatives, or at least I did. And each one of these coins has a full day's worth of food in it. And there's only 2 factories making these in the Wasteland anymore. So, like, I mentioned the war earlier. These factions still fight over controlling these factories, because if you control the factory, you control the wasteland. But eventually bombs happen, terrible things happen, things get overrun and destroyed. So eventually those factories are going to stop producing and everyone's going to starve. I forget I think that's 5. So the last one would be the Toth. And the Toth are like these beings from outside space and time who were drawn to the world when we started messing with science beyond our understanding. And they just want to steal your brain. So they send their golem-like creations to either kidnap us or rip our brains out. And there are some humans that make a pact with these beings. But eventually, Alien Citadel will land on Earth and sing the song that ends humanity.
Any way you look at it, it's a real upbeat Hollywood ending. Just what we all look forward to. No, it's amazing creativity, Scott, and
thank you.
You just it rings true that you are a lifelong fan and you've put everything you've had into it.
Yeah. Now, Scott, we touched on this a little bit, but there is currently a Kickstarter going as of when we're recording this that will be ending the day after we've recorded this episode, but there's different editions of Wasteland Degenerates that have come out. So tell me about this Kickstarter that's going on right now and what's different about this latest edition of Wasteland Degenerates. We touched on it a little bit, but so people know what's cool about this edition that's coming out and what are some of the things that really excite you about this new version?
Yeah. So when I first came up with this, basically I wrote the entire 160 pages of rule book, like in the space of a few weeks. I just sat down, I banged it out, and I wanted to do that as my first project, but found out that I was releasing it on BackerKit, which is a great platform. It's incredible for being a pledge manager, but it's got a smaller scope than Kickstarter. So he said, well, why don't you just release a zine? And you can basically whet people's appetite for this sort of madness. And I was like, okay, yeah. So basically I released an 80-page zine that was called the Jumper Cable Edition. A jumper cable because it kind of jump starts the process. And there's a picture of a skeleton with jumper cables on the cover. Yeah, so that was the original release, but it was never the end product that I wanted. I always wanted to be a hardcover that could sit on the shelf with Morkborg and Cyborg, because those are all A5 sized, like 5.5 by 8-inch books, like that big. And I always wanted that to be the thing. And I always had enough content to make a hardcover book of double the size of the zine that I'd produced. But I had to wait basically until the right time to do that Kickstarter. And now the following year, I had enough people interested. I had the resources. I had enough credit on my cards to do the advertising that you guys saw.
Yeah.
And so basically what excites me about this is getting the fullness of my game's potential here and ready for everybody. And I had people talking about it. Some people didn't even back my previous campaign because they said, "Oh, I want to get your hardcover when it comes out." And I'm like, "Thanks, I guess."
Yeah. It'll come out a lot faster if you back this one.
Yeah. And I do have some super backers that have definitely come out of the woodwork to back both projects. And I could not be more grateful. So
Can we just touch on maybe a little of the response? Because it's very impressive, Scott. Just tell the viewers and the listeners, if you're on an audio podcast, what you were looking for in terms of a support goal to move this project forward and how the response you got. Because I love to hear it.
Basically, I needed about $10,000. $10,000 would be enough to pay my artist a living wage in order to actually get the final 80 pages that are not done yet done. So that was about $10,000. It would cost more to get the books printed and all that, but I have a pretty good day job. I could manage. Let's put it that way. I could manage on $10,000. As of this second, I just refreshed it. I am now at $41,720 from 689 backers with 22 hours to go.
It's amazing.
Boy. And you had goals all the way up to 50K. So we're pretty close to like the ultimate best case scenario here. So that's pretty cool.
Well, I only had goals up to about 2K, and I had to keep coming up with new ones.
Hey, might as well. Yeah, that's great. And literally the latest email in my inbox right now is from Kickstarter saying, update number 7, final 24 hours begins, GM screen unlocked. So they're doing a good job of, I know some people are concerned with Kickstarter as big as it is, and I'm sure they take a very decent cut of the pie when all is said and done, but they're doing a good job of marketing it for you. And I found out about the game from a Facebook ad. I was telling you this before the recording started, and after I'd read the thing and watched the video and saw this, and I was just like, this is really cool. I wonder if Scott would talk to us, because we talk mostly about tiny cars here, but my mission with this show was to show people that there's more to this hobby than just getting the cars and putting them on the shelf. Although there's nothing wrong with that. That's an absolutely fine way to do things if you want to do that. But, you know, I know for me, the whole world opened up to me when I realized that there were people that drilled these cars apart and modified them and did their own customs and didn't buy a model kit. They just took something that was never designed to be taken apart, took it apart and modified it. And I was like, that's so cool. And then I found out people played games with it. And I was shocked at how many people in this hobby had no idea that there wasn't just one, but there are multiple games out there like this. And then you've gone and made an entire world with lore and a backstory and even kept it open-ended enough that you can, who cares how the world ended? It ended, and here's your chance to kind of take these raw materials that I've made and build your own story with them. And I gotta say, one of the things that I really dig about your website is you've got these generators on the Wasteland Degenerates site. So you even can help people with creating their own characters, their own vehicles, and their own scenarios. So tell me a little bit about how those work and how people can use those when they play the game.
Yeah. So a lot of Mark Borg games are really, really lethal. Like, you could die in your first combat. You could die on your way to your first combat. You might have one hit point and be essentially dead if you get scratched by a cat. One of the things that a lot of these games do is that they have random generator. And basically it's one click. You can create your character and print it off, and you have a character that you can play in the game. It doesn't take long to roll the dice to make your character, but, you know, this is literally just one click. I asked my friend Stuart, who is a mad genius, if, you know, he could help me with the generator. And he's like, sure, but, you know, do you need any other generators? And I'm like, yes. And he said, well, if you donate to my favorite dog shelter, I will make you some generators.
Nice.
And I was like, those dogs are my friends too. So I donated money to his favorite dog shelter, and he also created a vehicle generator. It's called the Scrapyard, where you can just click and it will take all of the rules in the game for creating your own rad car or truck or whatever, motorcycle. And it uses all the parameters to make that car as cool or as lame as possible. It's randomized, you never know. And then finally, I have a mission generator at the back of the Jumper Cable edition, where you roll a series of dice to basically get an idea for what your job could be, what the reward is, basically the carrot and the stick. So if you refuse the job, you know, you'll have some penalty. You roll to see what the opposition is, roll to see what the complications of the mission are, because nothing ever goes quite to plan. Yeah, so like we really kind of brainstormed to get a bunch of stuff that would make things cool for players and make their lives easier when they're actually playing Wasteland Degenerates. And I've heard of people using all of these generators in their own play, even with the limited stuff that's currently available.
So you reference things not always going to plan. So let's imagine in your dream world, everything in terms of production goes to plan. Everything is fully funded, no hiccups production wise. When do you think products might be arriving or people are actually enjoying the new version that we're talking about?
That's a great question. When I first sat down and did the Kickstarter, I was like, well, August should be fine. But of course, I've learned a lot of hard lessons about how long it takes to get things printed. And there's issues with international shipping is always something that you can really rely on.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it'll probably be September or October before everyone gets their stuff. I am going to do my best to get it there first. But my thought is that at the rate that Matthew usually works, I can probably get all the art done by mid-August. And from there, I need to talk to the printers and get on their schedule. Who knows what other stuff is competing with me for time on the printers. So that may be something that might cause a hitch too. It's really hard to say.
Yeah, sure.
I started the jumper cable edition in June and July, and I got them printed in January, I guess. So this is going to be a lot more books and a lot bigger books, more complicated distribution. So we'll see. Crossing my fingers.
A lot of our audience has probably never played Cyborg or Mjorkboard or maybe even Dungeons and Dragons. How difficult is it for somebody like David to pick one of these up and start playing? What would be the ramp up time that you would expect to get to starting from scratch to playing your first round of the game?
That's a great question because, the Mjorkborg universe of games, they don't do something that a lot of other games do. Dungeons and Dragons and like almost every role-playing game like ever created has a section in the front saying, what is a role-playing game? How do I play a role-playing game? These books don't do that. They don't have time. The Mjorkborg book is 80 pages long. It doesn't have time to dwell on that sort of thing. It has too much hardcore art to waste any space on these things that all gamers already know. That said, if you find somebody who's familiar with role-playing games to run the game, it's exceptionally easy because the rules are not hard. It's you roll a d20, 12 or more, you succeed. That's basically the heart of the game. And it's not meant to be difficult to play. The barrier for entry is finding it in the first place, I think. Mm-hmm. Finding it and finding somebody, who's familiar enough with the tropes of gaming to actually run it for you.
And that kind of goes, Chuck, to what you were talking about earlier. It's almost like these stores and these meeting places are kind of the new coffee shops and parts of towns that I would have never expected. We just had a game room open in my hometown, and I'm here in just a really extremely conservative city, and that just goes to show the growth of the genre. It doesn't have, Scott, if you will, the taboo it used to have. You don't sell your soul when you start rolling the dice. And to me, as a dad and an uncle, I'll tell y'all both, I have a niece who was thrilled to no end when she got to do her first Dungeon Master night as the Dungeon Master. And I would love to be able to have that bond and that conversation with her one day and speak intelligently on it. So it's a way for parents and it's a way for aunts and uncles to connect because a lot more kids are doing this than we probably even know. And it's just a cool thing that they're doing.
Yeah, I've heard stories of my friends' daughters who just have a sleepover with 6 other little girls and they're all playing Dungeons and Dragons, and like they've got their pony paladins and their cool their cool dragon adventures, having all this imaginative fun that in such a way that I would have never imagined. Like as a boy growing up in the 80s, I had a particular way that I thought gaming was, but people are changing that definition as we speak. And I think that it's a lot like your diecast cars, because you're just saying that people are adapting the cars, people are adapting the games. I think that the entire culture is starting to look for ways that we can personalize things, because there's so much stuff out there in the universe right now, and like it's very nice to have something that's just ours. And that's what gaming and hobbies give to everybody.
I would go as far as to say, if there's not something out there for your niche, you probably just aren't looking hard enough. There's so much available for everybody. And on the rare time where you don't find something, well, then that's where you put on your Scott McDonald hat and you make it yourself and you give it to the rest of the world. So
yeah, exactly.
Kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really cool labor of love that you've done here. You clearly love the hobby and you love the art of creativity and storytelling, and you've done this really cool thing where you've reached out to other people that are like-minded and built something cool and gotten a buzz going. And I'm just tickled to death that we were able to find you and talk to you, and maybe hopefully introduce some more people to the world of tabletop gaming, because as somebody who kind of walks a little bit in both of these worlds, I think it's a lot of fun. It's a wonderful outlet. Some people go, well, I'm not creative enough to do it. You don't have to be. You can be as minimal or as out there as you want to be. I've played D&D with people who play it purely by the stats, and they just look at their thing and they go, okay, I'm going to do this. And there's other people that will write whole epic sonnets and poems and as bards and do long-winded storytelling when asked about something, and either way, it's fun, and it's a very welcoming hobby. They're hobbies like tabletop gaming and like diecast in a lot of ways. Typically, you're not going to find a lot of gatekeepers, because we realize that the hobby doesn't thrive without people who are willing to enter in and ask the noob questions. So I've found both worlds to be wonderful, and I love that there are ways like this that bring it together. And like you said, this one is great because you don't even need the cars if you don't want to. You can play with the cars, but this one, it really doesn't matter. And there's the other ones have more of an active miniature experience, like you said, but that this one, you could almost play it like while you're traveling. If you're on a long bus ride or a train ride or something, you could play it with your friends, and all you would need is the books and some notepads. Yeah. And again, let's sell this new pack a little bit more. Tell people, because it's not just the book and it's not just the mat. What are some of the other really cool things that are coming with this Kickstarter set?
Sure. So we funded enough for me to hire a bunch of Morkborg authors and artists to make little one-shot adventures. That one's called Dumpster Drivers, and it's set in a enormous junkyard, so large that each of these can choose their own little spot and make a whole new adventure. And I'm writing a new zine that's called Rad City Music Brawl, and there's a stock picture of a Radio City Music Hall in the background, and a couple of degenerates. One has a katana and the other one has a keytar with a chainsaw attached to it.
Wow.
We just unlocked the GM screen, and I was almost hoping we didn't, because that's going to be a little bit tricky to source, but we're going to do it. And these road grids that I showed you earlier, we actually unlocked a second road grid for your diecast cars, and I don't have art for it at all yet because Matthew, my artist, went on vacation. Curse him.
Right.
But no, I mentioned the cluster mushrooms. There's going to be one of the sides of the new road grid is going to be a mushroom forest where, running into one of these mushrooms could result in becoming zombified. And the flip side is going to be the red forest with all the wasps that can turn you into a walking egg sack. So as you're driving through, be careful, don't hit a tree. Yeah, and I've got other stuff from the previous campaign. I have solo adventures, 2 solo adventures. One's called Enter the Dismal Armory, and that's where you get into this like kind of dungeon-like armory, and you use like graph paper to like draw out the rooms, and you fight monsters and you find treasures and whatnot. And you can do this without a game master. This is the accessible one that you would hope to have, because it's all laid out for you in very simple, plain text. And the sequel to that is called Blood on the Bleak Road. And that one is after you get out of the Dismal Armory, you find a cool hot rod and you need to drive home. But of course, the way home is covered in mutants and raiders and
absolutely
and other threats. So that's where I add the car combat to the solo game. So I've got lots of stuff, and I don't know why I made so much stuff, but I guess that's capitalism for you.
I love it. So lots of really cool ways to enjoy the game. That is cool. I didn't realize that you could play it with or without a game master. So that's very fun. And again, just love the versatility of it. Love anything that gets people away from their screens and out in the world enjoying tangible things and interacting with folks in their neighborhood, or even
human people
playing. Even if you're playing it online, you can still play it online, but you're doing something that's interactive, involves your imagination, really puts your brain to work. And I'm not dissing screens at all. I live for screens. I use screens every day for my job.
No, I am.
But I do love that there's this world that is rising up of people that want to continue that human interaction and gather locally or online and play games and enjoy their hobbies, whether they're trading little cars or they're trading blows in the middle of a post-apocalyptic wasteland. There's just all these really cool ways to interact. And I commend you, Scott, for coming up with this really cool project. And we wish you nothing but the best on it. So before we wrap things up, is there anything else that you'd like us to go over while we have you here? Anything you wish we'd touched on?
I would like to say something, is that some of my players have created diecast cars and shared their work on the Facebook group for Wasteland Degenerates. So if folks are curious about some of the Wastelands cars and stuff that have shown up, feel free to join my public Wasteland Degenerates group on Facebook, and we can dig up those super cool pictures again. I love looking at those.
I did not know that there was a Facebook group. I should have known there's a Facebook group for everything.
There's also a Discord, yeah.
Yeah, there's also a Discord for everything. But except for this show, we should have a Discord. No, we wouldn't. There'd be like 3 people in there. It'd be like us, Dane, Self, and Rico, and the Eddies. But yeah, maybe someday. But yeah, so check those out. We'll make sure we link to those in the show notes. And again, check out what's the easiest way to check out Wasteland Degenerates online, Scott?
I would say going to the Kickstarter for now. Even after it closes tomorrow, you'll still be able to check everything out. I will have a late pledges thing, but also wastelanddegenerates.com is the website for getting on the mailing list.
There you go.
All right, folks. Well, you make sure you check that out. Get on that mailing list. It's a good one. And click around on that website. It's very entertaining to do the job board and see what it comes up with. And it's just really fun. So, well, thank you again, Scott. Thank you to the Wasteland Degenerates crew. And thank you, watchers, listeners, wherever you are, for making it to the end of another episode of Diecast Breakdown. If you want to leave a little comment saying you're part of the close down crew, we'd appreciate it. We always love hearing from the people that make it to the very end of the episode. And we especially love hearing from our patrons. Here's a picture of their names again, showing up over our faces. So be sure to check those people out and thank them for making this show possible. And we get it. You spend all your money on tiny cars and you can't duke any change our way. It's fine. We do it too. But if you can't give to us, you can always share the episode. That's the best way to get word about this show out here and help spread news about Wasteland Degenerates, and all the other fine guests that we have here on the show. And of course, check out drivendreams.org, our charity where we're 25,000 cars for kids in need all over the world. You don't have to leak a stamp. You don't have to box anything up. You don't have to write a check. You just get some nice, unopened, packaged new vehicles. You donate them to a local place in your area.
Not a loose PT Cruiser?
Not a loose PT Cruiser. Not any PT Cruiser, because that kid's been through enough. But you can take them to a food bank. You can take them to a children's hospital. You can take them to your local first responders. First responders like giving them to kids that are having a very bad day. Any charities, churches, food banks, like I said, women's shelters who offer shelter for domestic abuse victims that often have their kids with them. They probably may not have much for their kids to do. So for them to be able to hand over a car that doesn't require any batteries, doesn't require any special parts, it's just a self-contained toy that any kid over the age of 3, of course, can enjoy. So think about that and visit drivendreams.org once you make your pledge of vehicles, and we're going to tally all those up at the end of the year and hopefully get to 25,000. We've gotten pretty close to that number in the past. We've been doing this for a few years now. Our co-host Mark is doing some amazing stuff with that. So check it out, drivendreams.org, as well as diecastbreakdown.com. And as always, we want to thank you for making it to the end. Nope, that's not how we end the show. I've only done this 120 times. And as always, we want to thank you for coming along with us for the ride. So until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags.
Thanks for listening to Diecast Breakdown. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and tell a friend to listen in. Find Diecast Breakdown on your favorite social media platforms or visit diecastmedianetwork.com to learn more about this and our other projects. Diecast Breakdown is a presentation of Flying Valiant and the Diecast Media Network.